unmute everyone here, and we are live. I'm Omnicheck, Mike. I'm here as one of your representatives of the Popper Cube Committee. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Oh, see, I was hoping you were going to say, "How are you doing?" So I could say, "Well, good."
God,
This
just
is your other,
haunted by my first foray into content creation.
yes, good morning, slash later than morning question mark. If you are not in the USA on Eastern time zone, this is Fizzled. I am another representative of your stewards of property. We are excited to chat with you today.
Yeah, today we are talking about Jumpstart and Core 2021. Um, Thankfully, there's not too much in Jumpstart we need to go through, but one of the few things that we do need to go through is going to be a little bit contentious, I imagine. Everyone's had plenty of time to look at these things. I think we're fizzled through together a document, and I think we're going through pretty much all of the stuff that we talked about positively from the quick hits. Um, so let's get stuff started off with this one that I've got up on the screen right now. Daybreak Charger. So we've got Daybreak Charger, and I in the quick hits I also spoke about another
You talked about
card.
Drill Master,
Yeah, so there's Cavalry Drill.
and then Pyromancer was the other one. Viashino
Yeah.
Pyromancer.
Sadly, I don't have a setup for 3 cards up at once. So yeah, we got this 2 years ago, and we passed on it then. So I guess my general take on this was I have really enjoyed Viashino Pyromancer in a bunch of formats. And these feel reasonably close. They're not quite analogous, but I don't know. I'm having a hard time wanting to play Daybreak Charger, but it also looks like the type of thing that kind of has haste in a similar fashion to Viashino Pyromancer. Um, I'm not super high on this. What are you thinking, Fizzled?
So for me, the big sticking point is the lack of evasion or pseudo evasion. Um, I, I on these early drops, I often think about what's the worst case scenario, and unfortunately here it's I played a ball lightning that can't attack,
Yeah.
uh, and I didn't play a one drop before it. Um, Drillmaster doesn't feel measurably better. That was essentially our logic at the time. Uh, if this is the first card that you play on curve, uh, then you feel like it's wasted and the stats are merely okay, as opposed to exciting, and all of the other colors at the 2 drop spot are doing more interesting things that are setting themselves up for later turns.
I mean, white is one of the colors that gets a reasonable amount of 1 drops. The catches I'm looking through, and most of them also have 1 toughness. So I think if we were going to include one of these effects, I'd probably prefer to be on Cavalry Drillmaster, just because it's slightly more likely to allow the creature to survive combat. Um, yeah, this is an interesting one, and one that I might have to ponder on a little bit more. I'm not sold on either of them. Um, Let us continue on to another card. Um, so next on our list, we have Rambunctious Mutt, which, in addition to being a very adorable, very large dog, so this is 5 mana, 3/4. Whenever it ETBs, you destroy target artifact or enchantment and opponent controls. So it's got a little bit of built-in protection there. Instead of having the May clause, it has the opponent controls. And yeah, the closest analog we have to this is Core Sanctifiers, which is either a 3 mana 2/3, which isn't great, or it's a 4 mana 2/3 with the blow up an artifact or enchantment text on it. I'm not super in love with Rambunctious Mutt just because I feel like by the time you're at 5 mana, you're, yeah, I don't know, it just doesn't feel great to me. Like tacking removal onto this mid body, like the thing that has always been really great about things like Reclamation Sage for me is the fact that they do come down early enough to actually interact in the early turns. Um, any thoughts on this one?
Yeah. I think I was the one who scraped from the back of my brain core sanctifiers. I guess the most positive thing I can say about it is, or sorry, about Rage Mutt, not Rage Mutt, Rambunctious Mutt. My apologies. Is because it does have to come down a little later. We have a better chance of our opponents having drawn and played their artifacts or enchantments naturally. Um, the downside is still it's kind of a mediocre body, um, and if you're casting it without getting uh, the destruction effect, the disenchant benefit, do you really wish you were playing something different?
I
And
think the answer is yes. I don't feel great about a 3/4 for 5 with no other text attached to it. Um, Popper and Salt points out same size as Rubbleback. Cat Party points out hard to tell what deck Mutt fits into. Yeah, like I think if we want to address some of the more powerful enchantments, something like Core Sanctifiers getting in, because like there's not really a deck that wants a 2/3 for 3, but there are decks that would be okay with that, especially as like a board card. The nice thing about Core Sanctifiers is obviously you can just toss it in the main deck, and it has a fail case that is not absolutely miserable. Um, yeah, I really wish that they would just give us a Reclamation Sage, even if it was like slightly tweaked on some of the numbers. But these are our options for artifact and enchantment removal strapped on creatures. So I'm not sold on Mutt.
that's an easy concurrence from me.
Let's move on to a card that I think is actually just solid. So that card is Swift Response. Just someone absolutely, absolutely kicking the hell out of a Cyclops. So this is a riff on
Nice.
an effect we've seen before, and I think it's very good.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
there's a sorcery that does the same thing at common. There's a sorcery spellmaster uh, that allows you to cast it at instant speed, or rather with flash. Um, from Origins, maybe it was downshifted in
No, it
Ultimate
was not.
Masters. Okay,
Yeah, they just
I know I put
reprinted
it on
that
the
one.
list, but yeah. Um, so this is this is better. I mean, it's clearly better. It's clearly outclassing many of the other 2 mana destroy an attacking creature, destroy whatever variants. Um, I, there's it's just so clearly good that I run out of, like, I don't have anything clever to say about it. It's just, this is good. Why aren't you playing?
Yeah, like I'm just fine with this. Like I don't know. You can only get so excited about an efficient piece of removal with no flares, but that's exactly what this is. Big fan. Uh, all right. Now that we've gotten, is there at least an exciting pacifism effect that could go out for it? Probably. I'm not really looking to up the removal count in this cube right now. So Yeah, it would probably eat the spot of another piece of removal. Next up in blue, we have Mistral Singer. So this is a 3-mana 2/2 flyer prowess. That's it. Prior to this, we had Jeskai Wind Scout, which is the same thing with -1 toughness, and different creature typing. I'm I'm fine with this. I'm not like as high on it as some people are. Oh wait, we definitely missed a white card. We'll finish Mistral Singer and we'll backtrack. It's fine.
Okay.
Yeah. What are your feelings on this one, Fizzled?
So the other comparison for me was Aven Windmage, core 20, and that one only gets instant and sorcery, so that's the pseudo prowess when they felt prowess was too strong. Not wrong. Um, it's, I mean, it's just a reasonable and efficient beater, or potential beater, I should say. Signal spells matter. I, I like it. I don't love it. There are other cards in the cubes that I am similarly low on, but I know other people love them, and where somebody loves something and where I am apathetic about it, I'm inclined to leave the thing in that somebody else loves. I wouldn't make the change unless there was a compelling argument from the chat or from the Discord later saying we absolutely love this effect, we need it.
I look at this and I'm like, it's fine. I don't know. There's maybe a case for like swapping it in as a 3-drop over something else, but like blue honestly has a surprisingly solid creature suite these days. I don't know. Not super in love with Mistral Singer, but it is best in class for like low drop common flyer with prowess. All right, let me hop
Yes,
back
that
to the
very crowded spot.
yeah. Yeah, 3 is super crowded in blue. Honestly, I would love to get more lower drops in there. All right, let's go back and actually talk about the white card that I totally like glazed over for a second with. So we have Warded Battlements. So 2 and a white for a 0/3 defender wall. Attacking creatures you control get +1/+0. Fizzled, I'm not sold on this effect.
I mean that's understandable and acceptable. I'm not upset with you for not being sold on it. The basically my view on it is the body blunts opposing aggro decks. So if you're somehow mono white or white X aggro versus red X aggro, this is going to, air quotes, gain you uh, 2 or 3 life because it's going to block something that needs to attack because that's what your opponent's trying to do, and it's going to increase your damage output, giving you a better chance to close out that aggro game. It also lets your 2/2s or 2Xs trade up with the increasing number of 3 toughness bodies that we have. I know in multiples, this was very impressive in the very little bit of core sealed that I got to play against my brother-in-law. I'd like to see it in the cube. I understand if I can't persuade the rest of the committee or if I can't persuade the chat with what I've just said.
Yeah. I don't know. It's in a really odd spot of being a 0/3 wall with battle cry. I totally get the argument for it, like having this effect so that your aggressive stuff is more aggressive and you also are able to help in the aggro mirror. Yunra asking, what would you replace if it was to come in? I don't know. I'm looking through like white 3s. Like maybe this is better than Haven Rift Watcher. I don't know. Um, Curve Topper for White X aggro will steal some games out of nowhere. Yeah, like it does make your pile of 1/1s the deck like a lot more threatening. Like a 2/1 is something you actually need to consider how you're blocking, and I don't know. Yeah, I guess I could be convinced of this if we could find a solid cut for it. Nothing is like leaping out at me right now, but if we could find a solid cut for it, I'd be interested in testing it.
So if I were an absolute monster, I would say Martyr's Soul. They both really want to be in a white X token space decks,
Mm-hmm.
and Battlement is encouraging you to go wide and reinforcing your wide strategy. Wide matters rather than Martyr's Soul, which is slowing you down a turn to play the Convoke, go tall with one creature. Um, I don't think that's necessarily right. That's my off the cuff because you just asked that.
No. That I hear you. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I am higher on warded battlements than I was coming in. I will give you that one. But let's keep moving on. We have next.
Before we move on, I do want to say one more thing. I desperately wish this were green is what needs that creature buff universal effect.
Ooh.
More than
I mean, so white green really is like one of the tokens pairs. So yeah. I feel like you're going to see this alongside green cards a non-zero amount of the time.
Yeah, I mean, I absolutely agree.
All right. Next up, we have Roaming Ghostlight. This is a Mistraven style effect. So it's 5 mana for a 3/2 flyer. When it enters the battlefield, return up to one target non-spirit creature to its owner's hand. We've already looked at the math on this before we ever spoke about this. It doesn't miss a whole ton of the cube. Yeah,
like you said, it was like 12 creatures. One of them's Guardian of the Guild Pack, which you can't hold against anything.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know. I think this card is neat. A 3/2 in the air is a reasonable clock. Our blue 5s are perennially very crowded. But I don't know. I kind of like this weird ghost jellyfish. I'm also very willing to be convinced that this is trash. It's definitely close. Cut a 7-drop? Yeah, I'm always down for that. It's a different yeah, I want to like this. I really love like a Mana War effect, and this is, I would not say the best of those effects, but it certainly does things.
Yeah, it suffers from maybe that old core problem. It's a good effect. It's the effect that you absolutely need in Retail Limited. In Retail Limited, I loved playing it. I don't know if it's exciting or interesting enough, but it just works.
Yeah, I could see that being
the Stibs caveat from a while back. If you use your bounce spell on a token, it can be a 5/5 token or whatever. It is a kill spell in blue, as opposed to a tempo spell.
Yeah. I mean, the other thing is, though, this just does have flying to get over most of the tokens in the cube. Like, yes, we have some stuff that makes spirits, but this also provides itself a way to get around those tokens in addition to bouncing them. Although, actually, most of the flying tokens, now that I'm thinking about it, besides, like, Battle Screech, are mostly spirits, which puts it in a weird spot.
Yes.
We're gonna have to think on this.
It was really the bigger creatures. Essentially, there's not Penumbra. Yeah, Penumbra. So Penumbra Spider is really what I was picturing, removing or bouncing out of the way.
Yeah, that does seem like a valuable target to get out of there. Um, yeah, I don't know. I'm not 100% sold on this. I think it is strictly different than Mist Raven. I think it's worse most of the time than Mist Raven, but only by like the barest of margins. Um, yeah, let's move on to black, and this time I have actually double checked that there aren't any more. So we have Crypt Lurker. So this is a 3 and a black for a 3/4. When it enters the battlefield, you may sacrifice a creature or discard a creature card. If you do, draw a card. I am deeply nothing on this. I think it's a cool way to phrase this like ETB sack a creature. I like the design of it. I'm not here for this. I don't know.
Uh, I think that's fair. I feel like there was something in the quick hits that made me think we needed to talk about it just in case somebody had differing opinions. Yeah, Popper and Salt is saying I think what we probably said, if not what we should have said. It's a side grade Wicked Guardian. Cat Party is agreeing. So it does a similar thing to Wicked Guardian, removing one of your smaller creatures, um, basically giving another card. The discard a card option is a little interesting. We don't have great recursive regrowth effects. If we had Disturbed Burial or Reassembling Skeleton or something like that,
So
keep
I
up a little
personally, for
higher.
me, just the fact that you can get the card draw without having to worry about like weirdly like damaging your board. Like, yes, there are ways to make Wicked Guardian's downside like not matter, like targeting a big thing or targeting something with protection. And like a 3/4 is a much more resilient body. I don't know. I'm kind of, now that I've thought about it a little bit more, I'm kind of leaning to this just being better than Wicked Guardian, especially because like a 4/2 is a kind of awkward body.
Yeah, I'm not 4 versus 2. Um, I think this is one where I'm going to end up deferring to the vision of the chat. I like that you have the better chance of your creature surviving the 2 damage with Wicked Guardian, but I like having 3 power. I like having a more resilient body, a bolt-proof body, a little bit more. I
I
think.
I could also just be fine with like not including this type of like 4 drop, maybe draw a card, maybe don't. Like I could be fine with just ditching Wicked Guardian and trying to find another Phyrexian Rager style effect.
Uh, what's my other silly, crazy boy choice? Uh, my other crazy question: what about lowering Black's curve by 1 and replacing something like Midnight Scavengers with this? So you're not getting that Gravedigger effect. You are getting a slightly bigger body for cheaper option card filter, essentially.
Yeah, I could be down for that. Midnight Scavengers obviously has the issue of it has this weird flavor text down here that says melds with graft rats, um, which is not super conducive to newer players to the cube having a good time with this card, since it never melds. You never get to see this. Oh, it's not going to show me the whole thing. Okay, I figured it would show me the flip side. Yeah,
Oh
I
yeah, that's fair.
I could see this over Midnight Scavengers. Midnight Scavengers is one of those things that might be good to just prune for cleanliness's sake, but I'm I would be amenable to just cutting this like mid-range thing that has sacrifice a creature printed on it and finding something else to do at this spot. Yeah, the 3 or less is awkward at sometimes. Yeah, it's 3 or less and it's to hand. Like if this just had an unearth stapled to it, I would be much more keen on it. Um, yeah. So yeah, just kind of neutral on this Crypt Lurker. We also have Masked Blackguard. So this is in the vein of cards like Hired Blade, which I will be putting up on screen now. So black is now getting flash as one of the things that it does. Someone in the chat pointing out if you want to all Gravedigger effect, why not run Cadaver Imp? I would be amenable to Cadaver Imp, and I think someone even may have mentioned it. We'll get to it later. There were a bunch of folks who wrote in before the stream because they wouldn't be able to make it. So I will probably be reading those out later. I'm deeply neutral on Masked Blackguard. I think it probably is you know what? Here. You want to know what I'm going to compare Masked Blackguard to a reasonable amount of the time?
It's Ambush Viper.
No, I'm just going to compare it to this. Like, defeat is probably closer to... I guess this is a sorcery, so inaccurate comparison, but like it's probably just going to come down and eat something and then probably die. Like, I cannot imagine holding up 5 mana for this thing to eat a X3. That just seems very suspect to me.
That's completely fair. So I'm the one who stuck this on the list. I guess my vision is Hired Blade has always read awkward to me, and it usually just plays as I am blocking and killing a creature, as opposed to using the pseudo haste. Hired Blade has the benefit right now of killing, I believe, all of the hexproof creatures that we just added green. But we lose, I guess, interesting extra choices. Masked Blackguard. You're not supposed to pronounce it the way that I know. Can kill them with extra mana as a downside, but it comes down a turn early, kind of like Ambush Viper, which I like, and that makes the idea of pseudo haste powerful. That was essentially my whole line of thought. If I were going to put Blackguard in, it would be a straight up replacement for Hired, to not shore up, but to give black another aggro / tempo kind of thing. And I don't know if black needs that, but I wanted to point it out and get thoughts.
I'm just not sold on I'm sitting here with like my finger covering over that line of additive distraction, and I'm not sure I'm sold on like worse Ambush Viper. Because let me just pull that up for folks at home. Death Touch, obviously a big upgrade. I don't know. I have a hard time with like 2/1s getting flashed in like defensively and not being able to trade super high up. I don't know. We'll probably talk about this
like
behind
somebody
the
who doesn't
scenes.
play very much Vintage.
What was that?
So you sound like somebody who doesn't play very much Vintage.
I understand that Masked Blackguard does a reasonable approximation of the worst use case of Snapcaster.
Yes.
Let's continue on. Let's keep this going though. Let's talk about a card that I absolutely loathe. So this is Village Rites. I think this is the best version of another card that we've seen a few times. So first we saw this in the form of Altar's Reap, which is a whole colorless or a whole generic mana more, for the exact same effect. Then we saw the version from Ixalan, Costly Plunder, which allowed you to sack an
Oh, that's funny.
artifact as well. I am not huge on super defensive cards that deteriorate your board. Um, that is my wholesome take on this. I understand that if you cover up the additional cost, this looks a lot like a mini Ancestral Recall. Um, but I am not stoked on setting my board back to look at more cards that maybe help me advance my board state. Um, yeah, that's kind of it. I do understand that if you cast this in response to a removal spell, you get some value. But again, like, I would much rather have a cube that encourages people to play proactively.
I think that is both in line with the original guidelines that we were given from Stibbs's vision and their assessment. There are those moments where something like Village Rites or Costly Plunder is going to get rid of your opponent's pacifism because you killed the creature that they pacified, but you can do that with your Carrion Feeder instead, or Wicked Guardian.
Yeah.
Any number of other creatures that have sacrifice effects built into them, the board. Um, if our cube were bigger, if we were 540, I would more seriously consider it. And if people were desperately in love with it, I would obviously consider the majority commentary, I guess, more than my gut feelings here. Um, it's a good tool. I'm not excited about it.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. Let's continue on to red. Just double checking. Yep. Okay. We're good. I haven't missed anything. And go with.
Before we get to the next card, that's from Voxnut. It's only good if you can recur the creature, or it's a chump blocker, or commit removal. The vision of the cube is proactive plays. It doesn't fit. Kind of in my commentary.
Yeah, I
Yara
mean,
says,
I went into this a lot more in the Discord, but if you're ahead, you're pulling your board back in some cases, and if you're behind, you're again deteriorating your board at a hope of advancing your board. So I just don't think it lines up with the current vision of trying to encourage people to play to the board.
yep. And Yara actually spelled that out in the chat, and I completely agree. Hooray.
Let's move on to red. We've got Chandra's Magmut. It's a bear that taps to ping players. A bear is fine. Sometimes bears can't attack profitably. This just sits there and pings them. That's my sales pitch.
Oh, that was it. I thought you were going to say more. I thought you were going to talk about the whole history of red having 2/2s for 2 that had downsides. No, it's weird because I know in the document, of course, I'm not looking at myself. There's a couple other bodies and effects that are similar.
Got Thermo
This
Alchemist.
one is, yeah. Bladeback Sliver was the one that was in my head. It's very weird to me that Modern Horizons is not as good as this, or a Modern Horizons card is not as good and efficient as this, rather.
Not hitting creatures is a bummer, I agree, but the fact that I'm reading chat, excuse me. I agree that not hitting creatures is a bummer, but the fact that this basically can be either a 2/2 or an unblockable 1/1. 1 1 um, 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 But yeah, like I like this as a reasonable play early, and then it kind of dodges the issue that some aggro cards have where it can be outclassed just by your opponent kind of hitting their land drops and playing stuff.
Yeah, I agree. It's more exciting than unexciting. Um, I'm not, jumping out of my seat because I love it so much. But it it just does work. It just works, as the aggro players say. Uh, it goes to the face. It fits a lot of our later turn cards, like raid bombardment, where we want to be able to we want to get our opponent's last two or three life. Uh, Sometimes red can't do that. This helps.
Also,
Somebody said something.
as someone's pointed out in chat, um, it does come in a very, very fancy. Let's find it. Yeah, you can be very fancy with this, depending on if you'd like to sink down some money on this fancy foil. I'm sure it's not that expensive. Yeah, I am generally a pretty reasonable fan of this. It has the classic aggro card issue of this is not super exciting. It's just very reasonable. Also, it is a Doberman, which I appreciate. It's like 2 cents more than the regular one, I'm sure. Yeah, it's yeah, it is 11 cents versus 10 for a non-foil. So yeah, not exactly breaking the bank there. Let's continue on to a card that I'm sure people will have opinions on. This is Hobble Fiend. So it's 1 red for a 2/2 or 2/1. So Piker. Um, it's got trample, and it has the famous carrion feeder ability of sack another creature, put a +1/+1 counter on it. Although this time it costs a generic mana. This is a sacrifice outlet I feel better about as like a way to mitigate removal that your opponent has, because it's just going to keep making it bigger. I do not think this is better than Carrion Feeder before anyone asks. Carrion Feeder is best in class for that effect. Yeah, for me, I think this is solid. I'm kind of okay with just the base rate, and then if you get to feed stuff into it that was already dying, like cool, great, I'm fine with that.
Yeah, I mean, that's fair. So this is one that I was not as enamored of, um, but that's entirely because I don't like how fragile it is. I guess is my issue, um, or I should say, I don't like how fragile it is to start. Um, but trample is so good, and then signaling that red has another Aristocat's body is also very good. Um, I I like the play pattern. Sorry, I like the decisions available, um, between the idea of trample and having the sacrifice ability to add a counter. Um, I'm basically my biggest issue is I don't know what I would swap, uh, that other people would agree is the right answer to swap. I know that when I say Mog Flunkies, everybody will lose their mind because why would you touch Mog Flunkies?
I
Um,
mean, there's plenty
but
of higher end stuff that I would be okay with seeing go away. You know me.
yes, sorry, I'm just now looking at how many threes there are in red now. We have shifted that curve very low.
Oh
I
yeah.
love it.
I love me some low drops. You have Scophos War Leader that's in, which does have just big dummy as reminder text, but I don't know. Like this this ends games more effectively, but you're going to play Hobble Fiend in a lower curve deck more often. I'm I'm so here's the thing. I'm fine with base rate Hobble Fiend of Piker with Trample. I'm fine with that. If you activate it just once, cool. I'm less stoked about the baseline of something like Scophos War Leader. Like 5 mana, 4/5, not super stoked on that personally.
It gets Menace. Menace is so good.
It does get Menace.
Yeah,
Like
I'm
but
being facetious. I don't have a problem with it. It's very clear that we're going to end up chatting about this for a while.
oh
And
yeah.
I think that's fair.
It's one of those fun ones where the behind the scenes is just going to go back and forth and back and forth. But I do want to find a place for Hobble Fiend. Let's
Cat Party and Riles both comparing to War Leader, finding it kind of boring. And yeah, that's reasonable. I will note that I mainly pushed for War Leader because I wanted to make it clear that Black Red was where Aristocrats lived. And that was, we really only had War Leader and the Garden Dragon Red to signal you should be sacrificing your tokens.
Yeah. All right, let's move on to another red card. And this is, oh god. Apparently Stormcaller is not the only one with those two words in its name. Stormcaller. It's 3 mana for a 3/2. When it enters the battlefield, it deals 1 damage to each opponent. This is one more generic mana than Viashino Pyromancer for the same thing, but +1/+1. I'm probably okay with this. Again, it's not thrilling. I would love more opinions on this from either you or the chat.
Yeah, sure. Can you pull up Gitu Journey Mage, which I hope I put in the.
Oh boy, I have vague memories of what this card does. So let's pull up Gitu Journey Mage here. So it's this card, but you need to control another wizard. Like Stormcaller is probably fine, right? 3/2 is one of those magic bodies that like forces people to actually consider blocking it, and trades up sometimes. It's probably just fine compared to a bunch of other hypothetical math. With a bunch of hypothetical math to Fervent Cathar. Actually, Fervent Cathar.
Isn't that
So this is the 3 mana 2/1 haste. When it ETBs, target creature can't block this turn. I mean, it certainly compares favorably with Cathar in like a tokensy matchup. Yeah, I mean, Cathar has kind of been outpaced over the years. It's just not as premium as it used to be.
That's accurate. Sorry, I'm currently looking at what our blink options are. I don't that you're gonna blink this a whole bunch of times or ever, but
yeah, I wouldn't anticipate that you're doing a whole bunch of blinky shenanigans, but if you happen to, I guess you're okay with it. There are worse things you could target. Stormcaller being a Planeswalker type card has the major downside for people who bling the cube. Yes, I am fully aware that this is not available in foil, but we're getting to 5 lands later here, which are not available in foil, but are, spoiler alert, getting into the cube. So yeah, I'm probably fine with us finding a home for Stormcaller. It's an aggro card. It's not the most exciting, but it does what it says on the tin. Let's move on to a card that I am actually excited for. Just get some jump ins, trace over the lightning there. Yeah, there you go. See, like you've got options. So let's move into green here with a card that is exactly two other cards stapled together. I guess not exactly. So this is
Is it
Llanowar
Rancor and
Visionary.
Wild Growth?
What was that?
I asked if it was Rancor and Wild Growth. I was wrong.
No. So Llanowar Visionary is roughly an Elvish Visionary stapled to a Llanowar Elves. I like this. It draws a card, it adds mana, it gets you to your 5 drops a turn early. This is fine. There's nothing, I have nothing against this, but again, yeah, like I don't know what else to say besides this is a reasonable card to play.
Yeah, it's as long as the goal is our 5 or 6 drops, and right now the goal is really our 5 drops instead of our 4 drops. It's reasonable. Drawing a card is good. Ramping yourself to your end game a turn earlier is good. I mean, I like it. I've been talking to a few cubers who are running Peasant, and their worry is that it's not exciting enough because they really want to end the game with their 4 mana spells. And I guess I want to keep an eye on that for us until we shift down to 4 drop being the end goal for green or green X. I like this. This slots in a lot of our ramp is currently at 3.
Yeah. And also just for fun's sake, compare with Shaman of Spring, a card that came out only 6 years ago. I very much enjoy Llanowar Visionary. I think it's going to be just fine. Valksnut is pointing out compared to Spring Bloom Druid, possible swap. Yeah, like it is comparable to other things that we have run in this cube that people have enjoyed. All right. We've got some other stuff in green here. We have now, so this is Pride Malkin, which is the absolute smuggest of cats. I am uncertain as to why this is in here. Fizzle, would you like to share with the class?
So we think we talked about. Geez, I don't even remember when we talked about it, but we discussed green needing more clear overrun type effects, and I know I brought it up a little earlier with Warded Battlement as well. Green from the MTGO cube, we were seeing that green was having a little bit of trouble closing things out. This doesn't quite distribute a trample counter, but does offer a buff that gives something else you have. Trample is better than a poke in the eye. It's not super exciting, but I wanted to point out the kind of effect that I think we're currently missing. So if somebody else comes up with an idea.
So I'm actually
find a card to slot in.
Crowned Ceratok versus this. So Crowned Ceratok, I had to look it up. Tuskguard Captain is the one from Cons that has similar text on it, but that is a uncommon for some reason. Excuse me. Let me just pull up the double layout here. So Crown Ceratok is 4 mana for a 4/3 instead of this. So 1 mana less for -2/2. Yeah, one of the weird things looking at the cube here is green does not actually have that many ways to get +1/+1 counters on things. This card would actually be a slam dunk if it was black. And that is a very bizarre thing to say. There are a grand total of 10 creatures in black that put +1/+1 counters on themselves or something else. Oh, excuse me, 9. I was miscounting Boot Nipper. Um, yeah, I don't know. It's a very good cat. I like it a lot, but I don't think this fits in our current configuration of the cube. So let's continue on. We have a card which I am struggling in my own brain to remember exactly what it does. So
it's preordained but green.
Yes. All right. So track down is 1 and a green. Sorcery. Scry 3. Reveal the top card of your library. If it is a creature or land, draw a card. Yeah, this is good.
I would grab the double layout again if you could. Seek the Wilds.
What card?
Seek the Wilds.
I don't remember.
Sorry, I'm trying not to cough into my mic.
I do not remember this card at all. This is... Look at the top 4 cards. You may reveal a creature or land from among them and put it in your hand. The rest on the bottom of your library in any order.
And it's reasonable that you don't remember this card. Nobody but me ever thinks about this card, I think. I just wanted to point it out. It's the closest analog I could think of for the approximate number of cards you could see. Seek the Wilds will miss every so often.
Mm-hmm.
Track down, air quote, never misses, because you always get to decide, do I want these cards or do I want to get rid of them?
I mean, Scry 3 is deep.
It is. And Scry 3, and then you decide you needed that pacifism, or you decide you needed pestilence to the second card. You get to leave that on top if that's the answer or the threat you, as opposed to Seek the Wilds, where it's only a creature or only a land.
Well, I mean, like the absolute like best mode of this is if you see a creature or land that you want and something else that you would like, so that you can draw the creature or land and then have the other thing on top for the next turn. Yeah. More hidden power than Winding Way. Well, so it's certainly like its fail case is better than Winding Way, right? Like Winding Way can sometimes just be 1 and a green, look at the top, put the top 4 cards of your library into the bin. But I think I would prefer to have both of these available. No Wildwood Patrol. We can talk about that in a second. Being able to arrange and keep cards you want on top is nice. Yeah, like I just think that Track Down is solid as a card filtering card that sometimes draws you a card and sometimes just sets up your next turn or two. Like the worst case scenario for this is 3 to the bottom because you don't need any of them right now and maybe drawing a card. And I think that's something I'm fine with. We can also compare to stuff like, I know this never got in the cube, but Adventurous Impulse, which has now been reprinted with new art that I actually really like. Do you have to track down quite a bit? I will never not like it. Yeah, like anything that compares even remotely favorably to Preordain in any way, shape, or form is something I am fine with. Yeah, I'm quite happy with this. Thank you for putting this one in, Fizzled, because I forgot about it.
No problem.
So we did have someone in the chat asking about Wildwood Patrol. Let me pull that one up. If it is, in fact, a Planeswalker deck card, that would explain why we didn't have it on our list. It is a 4/2 trample for 3 and a green. I'm just not stoked at the 4/2 body. We already discussed earlier with Wicked Guardian that I think that's one of the awkward bodies, but I'm very much of the 2 and a green. Did I say something else? Did I say like 2 and 2 green? If so, my apologies. It is 3 mana for a 4/2 with trample. I said 3 and a green. Okay, yeah. 4/2 is kind of an awkward body. It gets blocked by 2/1s and 2/2s and just gets eaten. The fact that it has trample is nice because it will still get some damage in over those bodies, so it's less appealing to block that way. But I don't love this.
Yeah, it's completely fair. If this were if this were a red creature, I would still dislike it because it doesn't have haste.
Yeah.
But it feels like something is missing, either resiliency or I don't know. An extra point of power might do it for me. I don't think I would love it, but I can see the appeal. It doesn't seem like it has quite enough impact on the board the turn it comes down.
Yeah. I think I'm inclined to agree. Is there anything else anyone would like to talk about in Core 2021? Before we move on, we've gotten through all the stuff that we had on our list to discuss, but if there's anything like Wildwood Patrol here that we've failed to discuss here, we're totally down to do that, or we can move on to Jumpstart.
You guys just say, we'll give you folks just a few seconds to type in if you have ideas.
Valsnet says, in a good green deck, it'll come down on 2, trade for a bear, and shock the opponent. Not what I'd be looking for. I mean, that is probably your best case scenario.
Yeah.
It's fine. Like, that best case scenario is fine. The worst case scenario is this just trading with a 2/2 on like turn 3, and that's not super great. My son will be most upset if he doesn't see Truffle Snout on screen. Let's do this.
We can fix that. Yeah.
These two sets managed to like hit me on things I think are cute. Truffle Snout is the cutest card in this set. I think both of them. I think the fact that the +1/+1 counter mode isn't as potent as I would like it is the only thing stopping me from saying let's give it a shot. 4 life is a reasonably sized chunk. The catch is a 3 mana 3/3 is just not enough. I legitimately love this card as something that is very adorable to me personally. It's a little smiling pig. I love it. I just don't think it's quite there. But yeah, I do find this card incredibly adorable. Between this and Tiny Bones, Watsu really just has my number at this point. There was something else. Oh, Drowsing Pteranodon.
Sure. Before you, I guess, move on, Truffle Snout. Too late.
No. I'm back.
Okay. I was going to do basically what I did before and compare this to Pulse of Marasa. So Pulse of Marasa essentially says, look in your graveyard, draw a creature or a land, and gain 6 life. That's basically where I'm at in my comparison with Truffle Snout. I'm assuming that I will always want to gain the life because I'm always a mid-range deck. Just have a 2/2. Seems reasonable but unexciting. If that excites enough of the audience, I'm down to figure out what card to remove for it. I don't love life gain just for the sake of life, you know?
Yeah. Also, absolutely my favorite flavor text out of the set. I just very much enjoy this pig with a job. All right. So Cat Party has brought up Dowsing Pteranodon. drowsing, excuse me. Another seldom used word. So this is 1 and a green for a 3/3 defender. As long as you control a creature with power 4 or greater, it can attack as though it didn't have defender. I did see this in the previews. I was not super stoked on it, strictly because it can turn your opponent's removal into a pseudo 2-for-1 by locking this down. I don't know. I could probably be convinced at some point. I do love the tactic of somehow getting this thing pumped so that it enables itself. Like,
yes, putting a Rancor on it is the combo of dreams.
Yes, I've invested 3 mana and 2 cards into this 5/3 trample. Yeah, travel prep. Yeah, I mean, I don't completely hate it. I am always a fan of cards where the fail case is still pretty reasonable, and I guess for me the thing is I don't know what green defensive deck people are running this in as like the fail case.
Probably Fling Tribal. Do you have that in this cube?
We could. There's two fling effects at common.
There's at least 3.
I must be forgetting what the third is. I remember the red one and the black one, but I don't remember a third. But honestly, like, I don't think this is the worst thing, and I could see someone cubing this in a pauper cube. I think it's fine. I will say though, just real quick. Oh no, what is the card called? Is it this one? Garrick's Companion. There we go. This card exists. It's just 2 mana for a 3/2 trample. I think the fail case on this is comparable of getting blocked by a 2x, and yes, I do understand it has 2 green pips, but I'd rather just have something that doesn't have a requirement to be, it doesn't need to meet a requirement to be reasonable. That's my take. All right. I think that takes us through Core 2021. Bloodfire Infusion was what I was thinking of as a third flank. What is... Oh, yeah. Old cards.
It's an enchantment, but it does stuff.
Yeah.
It doesn't do good stuff.
All right. So let's go to Jumpstart. So Jumpstart is the supplemental set that is not standard legal and thus got new cards that didn't have to follow the usual rigmarole. And so we only have 1 card before we get into the stuff everyone wants to actually talk about. So Trusty Retriever is 3 and a white for a 2/3. When it enters the battlefield, choose 1/1/1 counter, or return target artifact or enchantment from your graveyard to your hand. Fizzled, you have written down a couple of things that we should be looking at. So we'll start off with one that
I did that to myself.
I think is just better. So this is Custody Squire. It has evasion. It gets back lands, I guess, and it gets back creatures. Sorry, I always forget what the 3 types on Custody Squire are until it's in my hand. I think Custody Squire is just better than Trusty Retriever a majority of the time. But then we also have other things like you have, oh boy, I don't remember what these cards do.
Sanctum Gargoyle.
Yeah.
I hope I wrote.
Sanctum Gargoyle. Ooh. Yeah, so Sanctum Gargoyle is the same body, doesn't have the option for a +1/+1 counter, only gets back artifacts. And you also have...
but it has flying.
It does have flying. That is correct. You also have Lotus Eye Mystics on this list, which is 4 mana for a 3/2 with prowess, and only gets back enchantments. I think Trusty Retriever is fine. If it got back creatures, I would feel much better about it. If you tossed either artifact or enchantment and replaced it with creature, I would be super in on this. And that's the long and short of my take.
Okay, so hear me out.
Mm-hmm.
What if instead of doing that, we create a 2-card package? We add Trusty Retriever, Omen of the Sun. Get rid of. I'm kidding. It's Retriever is fine. It doesn't. Interesting thing. It offers a choice that I actually like, but we don't have an easy way to put. We don't have an easy way to put any enchantments in our graveyard, and the artifacts that end up in the graveyard are things like oh my brain, serrated arrows, which I'd rather have serrated arrows than Retriever, or
I mean, I'm trying to think through here, like
Wayfarer's Bauble. There we go. So yes, I want to get Wayfarer's Bauble back, but I don't want to get it back that badly. Once
I'm also looking at
I
like
don't care.
what's in white, and it's mostly just getting back another pacifism. Like, I guess this is kind of a 6-mana Necrotal in white, and I don't like saying that. Yeah, I think this is a cool design. I think it's borderline, but it's not quite there. Let's move on to the thing that everyone actually wants to talk about. I'm hoping I remember the correct. So the thing that I'm gonna say everyone wants to talk about, Thriving Heath. That's what it is.
I even put it in the list.
Oh, you did? I'm sorry. I apologize.
Yeah.
That's deeply unprofessional. So,
yes, we are so professional.
These lands. There's 2 things I want to cover here. One, these are going in. They are at fail case a guild gate of your 2 colors. At best, they provide fixing for a splash color, and the fact that you can just be drafting and have taken a few black cards or a few white cards and just go, sure, I'll take Thriving Heath. It doesn't matter what my second color is. I will play this. I really like the fact that these give you a pretty decent amount of openness while you're drafting. And on top of that, they also just give you openness in the game. Like, if I'm splashing off something and I go, okay, Thriving Heath and a mountain are my lands for my splash. If I hit a mountain, or okay, so if I'm like in a Naya where I'm splashing red, let's give that example. So if I only have like a couple of red pips in my deck, I go, okay, cool, I'm going to play a mountain and I'm going to play Thriving Heath. And if I hit the mountain, Thriving Heath, not doing great on this one. Thriving Heath can just be a Selesnya land. Yeah, these are early while drafting. Early pack fixing is amazing. I love the idea of fixing that also keeps my picks open to singles. I just think these cards are good. So now that we've got that out of the way, I'm just going to say this. We had a back and forth in the Discord as to whether the gates or the Oath of the Gatewatch / Shadows over Innistrad lands get cut. I'm going to level with y'all. I'm flipping a coin on it. There are reasons to cut one or the other. I'm just going to flip a coin. Take that out of my control. The other thing that I do want to talk about is if we are cutting a full cycle of lands, we do have the question of what do we replace the other 5 lands with? And for that, I think we're going to go back to an old classic. We looked at the cycling lands. There's something that people have asked about in the past. Cycling lands do legitimately make for very good limited gameplay. I am a huge proponent of them in pretty much any limited format. Uh, Again, a great land to splash off of. Um, if you go with a single secluded step and a single plains, if you draw the plains, you get to cycle your secluded step. If you don't draw the plains and you draw a secluded step, you play it as your white land. Yeah, like I think having the cycle of thriving lands and the cycle of the original onslaught cyclers is what we are most likely looking at. Will take the moment to point out that yes, we could include the there's also the Urza Saga lands, which all cycle for 2 generic. And there are also the deserts from Hour of Devastation, which cycle for 2, one of the color they produce and 1 generic. I think these are just best in class. Fizzle, do you have anything to say on this?
Yes, now that my audio is reconnected, I do have something to say. Uh, Thriving lands, obviously good. Cycling lands, uh, the deserts are my least favorite of the options, because they're a hybrid of paying a color. I overwhelmingly prefer that there's a color requirement, that there's a cost when you're drafting the cycling replace
Yeah.
the guild gates question mark that we might take out. So in favor of onslaught, and also just in favor of the arts from the onslaught ones. The downside is if you go with the originals, the blingiest version, the foils for some of them are very pricey, but that's not technically supposed to be a consideration.
Yeah.
That
It's good that we acknowledge that, like, yes. And I do want to acknowledge as well, like, I have been watching the prices on the thriving lands. Yes, they are about $2 a piece here. I have to imagine that has room to fall because people are opening more and more of this product. The market will eventually course correct. But yeah, like we should acknowledge that, like, yes, there are expensive versions of these cards that you could purchase. But yeah, I think that's where we're headed with regards to those lands. We will entertain other concepts, but again, I'm probably just going to flip a coin for which of the tapped non-gain lands we cut because I just don't want to make that decision.
oh yeah, I guess I should say that. So the easiest rationale for me, two rationale, as Cube Cobra and Cube list things, the multicolor sections are actually named after the Ravnican guilds. So the player would see Azorius and then see Azorius Guildgate, and those two things are conceptually linked. Necessarily know that Meandering River is linked. I
Fair
can't
enough.
remember the names of half of them.
Oh, you clearly spend less time just looking at bad fixing than I do.
I haven't been able to play a Pauper Constructed in a while, so bad. I'm sorry, let me admit, I've only been able to think about Pauper Constructed, but haven't been able to play with people who are air quotes playing budget Pauper Constructed. So if they're not like Swiftwater Cliffs, I don't know. Why are you playing a tap land?
Yeah. I hear that. Honestly, like, I've gone back and forth on, like, oh, we should get rid of the guild gates. Oh, we should get rid of the generic tap lands. But yeah, Valksnut points out currently there are few in circulation because at this point the full release of Jumpstart isn't out. Is that true?
Yeah, they don't release until next weekend.
Oh, I thought it was out already. I thought it released in tandem with M21.
No,
Huh.
stores were allowed to, I guess,
Ah.
incentivize purchasing in person last week.
All right. In that case, I take back what I said. It will probably be like 50 cents. Don't worry about them. The cost should be fine. Yeah. So I think that's the course that we'll be taking with these new lands. I'm very excited for these to get to see play. I think they are very good for both the draft and actual gameplay purposes. Um, yeah, I think this was a reasonably easy decision for us. That said, we have some more stuff in the doc here, which Fizzle was kind enough to ask about or to add in. So we had from user Chaves, Cadaver Imp in, Midnight Scavengers out as a suggestion. I like Cadaver Imp. I think it's fine. Let me actually pull those two up.
So while that happens, I think the thrust of it, the crux of it, was replacing Scavengers, which is just an expensive grave digging body that has a weird limitation with always being a creature back. The only thing I can think of to knock against Cadaver Imp is it's small and it comes out on turn 3 potentially when maybe you haven't.
I mean,
It's
I do like the fact that like on turn 5, Cadaver Imp could get something back and you could cast it, whereas Midnight Scavengers, you need 8 mana to cast anything it could get back. That's kind of my thought on these two.
Yeah, that's completely fair. For Gravedigger effects, I always just want to endlessly grave digging Croson Tusker. So I know it's the dream that we all should aspire to.
I do
So
love
my
cycling Croson
back.
Tusker. Yeah. So yeah, I think this is a reasonable thing that we can take into consideration. I have mentioned earlier in the stream wanting to sort of do some housekeeping and maybe cutting Midnight Scavengers as part of that. So Cadaver Imp's a very reasonable replacement for a similar effect. They also mentioned Sign in Blood, because I at some point realized that Sign in Blood's not in the cube. And they specifically mentioned Ransack the Lab. So here your trade-off is Ransack doesn't have a life payment. You only get 1 card, but you do get to look at 3. I might be amenable to this. I'm going to have to review the rest of our Black Draw suite, but I do like the card selection and getting to see a card deeper. I don't consider that 2 life an actual cost. It matters sometimes, but I do really just love being able to rip through a bunch of cards and find something that actually is more relevant. That's my piece on Ransack the Lab.
It's definitely reasonable. I think for what it's worth, most of the Black Draw suite is like Night Whispers, and then a variety 1/1 or 2/2 bodies that draw a card and pay 1. But there's a lot of card draw in Black now.
Yes, there is. Falconet also points out Ransack is cool with the Gravedigger effect. Yeah, like it's got vague synergies. I do just agree though that sometimes like drawing 2 on turn 2 is just good. Like I think Sign in Blood does have a place in this cube just as a good card, but I do want to take a look around. I'm going to try and cover just the inclusions here since I don't want to go back and forth for 2 of them. So we have a card that I hate to look at, but Twin Silk Spider. Boy, howdy. Just very uncomfortable art for me. This is half of a Penumbra Spider. Or I guess it's on ETB, so it's not even half of a Penumbra Spider. It's a Penumbra Spider across 2 bodies. I think this is a pretty reasonable card. I have a copy of it in my like on deck collection. Yeah, I think this is fine. It's something that we might look into putting in. It was in Modern Horizons, so obviously it was there were a lot of exciting inclusions in that set. So it may have gotten overlooked for that reason. Yeah, thoughts?
I think the thing that held it back when I was looking at it was the inability for one of the spider tokens to kill many of the flying threats. There's a lot of X2 and X3 bodies in blue and white specifically. So you're blunting an attack, but the spider ends up being more of a fog than a real threat on its own. I'm not opposed to having it, but I'd based on what we saw earlier in this year and our interest in giving green a better chance at closing out games as a primary color. I, it feels a little too defensive to me. I'm definitely open to more discussion, especially in the Discord, about
I am
what.
looking in like it really doesn't do much against like the larger flying the higher drop flying creatures. You are correct. Um like I'm seeing a lot of like 3 to 4 toughness things. Yeah, it does help blunt off like things like triplicate spirits and battle screech are real sad to see this. Um and like the earlier blue drops are by and large like 2/1 flyers. Yeah, I could.
And
Yeah, this one's a tricky one. Also, I hate looking at it. I am not a I'm not a friend of spiders. They also brought up Gather Courage. So this is a green mana with Convoke for target creature gets +2/+2 until end of turn, and they brought it up as a possible replacement for Giant Growth. Gather Courage is a very good card. Convoke makes this a more focused version of Ramosian Rally. Cat Party asked, do you hate all spider art in MTG? I hate spiders. Like, I am a pretty bad arachnophobe. So, in general, I don't care for spiders. But Gather Courage, I think, is a pretty reasonable side grade. But I don't know if this is sort of the textural change we need right now. Worth noting that mutagenic growth also exists, which is this but literally free. Fizzled, any thoughts?
yeah, the I guess argument that I remember reading in Discord was essentially um, this gives you an opportunity to use it as a counter spell, damage based removal.
Mm-hmm.
That's that's fine. I don't mind, but green's not really supposed to have a ton of counter spells, and we don't have that much damage based removal that isn't already green or red.
Yeah. I mean, I would be fine with this. I just don't feel the need to make the textural shift at the moment. Mutagenic growth feeds prowess a little bit better. That is true. Like, although I'm not sure what deck you're running green. I that is the other thing. Like, technically, mutagenic growth is not a green card, which means we either unbalance colors or we do some funky stuff to get that in there. In general, I think we have avoided most of the Phyrexia mana cards because it was a mistake. But yeah, I don't know. Chaves did bring up 2 cards that I am actually quite high on. So these are a pair of absolute classics. So this is the stunning duo that is Meyer Boa and River Boa. Both of these are 2/1s that regenerate for 2, and one has Swamp Walk, the other has Island Walk. I really like these. They just kind of get in. They're reasonable bodies. They regenerate, so they're a little bit resistant to removal, and they do kind of punish 2 of the colors that tend to be doing nothing without being like massive bodies where just losing to incidental land walk abilities feels like really brutal. Fizzled, You got any thoughts on these?
Yeah, the I guess really the downside is they create an opportunity for there to be a non-game,
Hmm.
multiple non-games in your draft pod. It's not exciting. Um, and then the upside is regeneration is the ability. I do like the impact that it has on the game. I like that it makes green creatures in particular more resilient. Um, I don't remember how regeneration shields currently work, or if we're still doing regeneration shields.
We
Um,
still do. We still do regeneration shield. So what happens is once you activate the ability, there is a regeneration shield placed on the creature. If it would die, it is instead removed from combat and tapped. Um, I'm just curious. So I have to imagine that in part these came up because I did talk about the hexproof creatures as being sort of Thrun esque. Um, Obviously, uh, not remotely in the same realm as Thrun in terms of actual effect. I'm just kind of looking through here in a second tab here because there's not a ton of great regeneration at common outside of these.
we
We've
don't want
got
to carapace.
uh, boy howdy, just tested me early on or I guess it's no longer actually early on my Saturday off. We do have stuff like this, like Pygmy Troll, which is a 2/2 when it gets blocked, which isn't fantastic. If we were to lean more into the +1/+1 counters thing, there's Sporeback Troll, which is a grafter that allows you to regenerate stuff with counters on it. Oh, Vauxnet also points out that these don't stop a lot of black removal on them in the cube, which is good, especially for Mireboa, which could otherwise dominate a matchup against BX. So I think the other thing is, like, these are 2/1s. Like, at the end of the day, I feel a lot less weird about these than, like, a 5/5 with Landwalk. Like, a 5/5 with Landwalk is much more of a feel bad in my mind than, like, all right, I guess I'm getting pinged for 2. I could be off on that with how people feel, but yeah, I don't know. There's just not a lot of other good regenerators. So the boas might be the peak.
Yeah, I'm seeing Blight Mamba, which is country.
All right, we have one final comment from Carnage wanting Pestilence out for something else. We've talked about this a whole bunch. Pestilence is obviously a very good card. I don't think anyone would argue otherwise. We do have an issue of there are not a lot of catch-up effects at common. So once a deck gets ahead, it can just stay ahead. Yeah, I'm still fine with Pestilence. Yes, it will occasionally have games that are unfun. But it also encourages players to actually figure out a way to have a quicker game plan. Like, for example, the decks that this is the most brutal against are decks with a lot of X1s in them because it costs so little mana to just wipe your board. Encouraging aggro decks to be focused on getting your opponent dead instead of doing cute stuff, I think, is something that is positive, but that's just me. Yeah, I don't foresee Pestilence coming out in a while. Also, I have long pointed to this. good personal friend Usman Jamil, who always tells you need more aggro cards, still thinks this card is fine in Pauper Cube, which leads me to believe that I can agree with that. If he's fine with this and doesn't think it's keeping aggro from being a thing, honestly, we've pushed in a lot of small creatures recently, which do the job. The other thing to remember is Pestilence does hit the player. I think Pestilence is one of the main reasons people bring up disenchant effects. Yes, I think it is unquestionably the best enchantment in the cube. Like, I feel very confident not looking at the list. Like, this tops out over Rancor easily in my book.
Yeah, Rancor is your second. There's nothing else that's Pestilence power.
Yeah. We have talked about it behind the scenes, just to lift the curtain a little bit. Like, we have talked about like the idea of cutting Pestilence, and we've never sort of followed through on it. I think this is something that if you find it unpleasant to play with, replace it with literally anything else. It's a 400 plus card cube. You probably will not feel a huge difference based on your decision, but removing Pestilence will change a decent amount of stuff. So this is one that I totally encourage people, unless you are dead set on following the exact 419, please switch it out. Like, have a limited experience that you personally enjoy. That said, do we have anything else that we want to discuss here today? I'll give folks a little bit of time in chat to bring up other cards that they either feel positively or negatively about. Or, just going to toss this out there, I do have a bunch of results from a survey that we put out, if anyone's curious.
While people are thinking, I'll just mention, because I did try to come up with a Pioneer equivalent of the Pauper Pestilence. You're legal at common. I tried replacing it with Ill-Gotten Inheritance.
Mm-hmm.
Not as good. It's one of those lifetime effects.
Yep.
And the decks that I built where I would have had Pestilence and instead had gotten it, ended up just getting murdered by anything that had 2/2 or better bodies, because I couldn't play catch up fast enough.
All right.
So
let me swap over. So I think that this should. Nope, that's the wrong window. Let me just make a new view here. I'm just gonna call this. Oh, okay. Uh-oh. That doesn't look right.
Did we lose it?
Here we go. Sorry, I'm just out here being wildly unprofessional watching YouTube videos on stream. But how do I do this? Sorry, folks. Here we go. Properties. There we go. So let's get that big. All right. So first off, out of, I forget how many people were surveyed. I'm not going to actually go into folks' actual answers. This was anonymous for a reason. So out of the folks who are in the Discord who answered this survey, we have about 38.5% of them are running the exact 419 of the list that we help maintain. Honestly, higher than I expected. And then I am completely baffled by the fact that a bunch of people then said that less people said that they use the Pauper Cube, and then I don't know what's going on here. point being, a bunch of folks make modifications. In fact, over 50% of the folks who answered our survey modified the list. A bunch of folks said we're doing a good job, and that folks are happy with it. I'm proud to see this. And most folks actually, there were no negative responses to has it improved or worsened gameplay. I would like to think that that's because we're actually doing a good job, but I feel like folks probably didn't feel like they should criticize us in this. But here's the fun stuff. Here's the archetypes. So I asked 2 questions. What color pairs do you like playing? And what color pairs do you think are the best in the cube? And I allowed people to choose up to 3 different options. One of the things that I noticed, white-blue, very popular. More popular than I would have expected. Blue-black I expected to be one of the most popular, but seeing white-blue and this high up, very shocked. I will say, if we look here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 color pairs are represented. The one that is missing is green-white. Yeah. Y'all don't like green-white. I talked about this and I joked about it in the Discord, but I understand. And Fizzle, feel free to interject at any point with stuff you'd like to discuss here or questions you have.
No, this is completely fair. We talked several times during the card discussion above. There are cards in white and cards in red that I wish were in green because they would strengthen the feel of green white or green red.
I will also
I think they get snapped up.
I will also take a moment to point out the fact that folks who listed their favorite color pairs as green X in this survey, it's less overall than white blue. So again, our theory that green is not a very popular color is bearing out with these results. Now, when it comes to what color pair archetypes do you think are best in the cube, everyone seems to think blue-black is quite good, and it is. Again, only 9 things made it in here. Again, white-green has been left out. But yeah, unsurprising to a majority of people, blue X takes up over half of this pie chart. I really didn't expect anything else. Blue is quite good. And then when we asked how many, what the worst archetypes in the cube were, red, green, white, and red, green actually bore out. Green, blue's in there as well. And interestingly, black, green, a little bit less, but yeah. So the 3 largest chunks. So what? That's like 21, 40, 42, 40, 57. So like a large chunk of folks do not like playing green, which means that when I eventually do one of these surveys again, a thing that will happen, I'm hoping to see these numbers get better. I'm hoping to see like a more balanced pie chart here. Obviously, it's going to be impossible to have it perfectly balanced. People have personal preferences, blah, blah, blah. But I would like to see all 10 represented here. Hopefully, we can get green-white to a point where people feel okay about playing it. 67, not 57. Yeah, I might be mathing wrong here, Valksnut. I have not had food today, so that's on me. But yeah, I would like to see all 10 archetypes represented in the best and like to play. That would be a thing that I would consider an achievement for the cube. But obviously, this allows us to replicate this poll and continue on sort of tracking these numbers as we go, because I would like to see a more balanced pie chart here. I think it's ridiculous to assume that we'd get 10% of each, but it is what it is. And then this one's just interesting to me. I did not expect I expected, honestly, when I asked how many people do you usually cube with, I gave the options of 2, 5 to 6, or 2, 3 to 4, 5 to 6, 7 to 8. yeah, like I'm unsurprised about 3 to 4 being a big chunk, but I'm very surprised that 2 is this large of a chunk. So I am curious as to if that should influence the design of the cube moving forward, but I don't. I think it's a little too early to make a call like that. And that's my crappy little presentation. I'm sure the next time that we run a survey, there will be more questions. Obviously, we welcome feedback. I can make some version of this available. I was thinking about typing up an article about it, but I didn't have the willpower to do so over a weekend. But yeah, I am happy knowing more about how people actually play the cube. I think spending some time to think about the optimal way to play with 2 players is worthwhile. Yeah. Obviously, like seeing this quantity of 2-player experiences, I do want to kind of think about that, which may explain why like some of these more polarizing cards have had such strong responses from them, like Guardian of the Guild Pact and such. Like if you're playing 2 players and someone gets that, like that is kind of your whole little cube event being forced to play against a card that you find miserable. So I can definitely see that being a negative thing for some folks and might explain some of the feedback that we get. Yeah. All right. So unless anyone has anything else, Fizzled or the folks at home, I think we're probably closing out this Q&A, and hopefully we'll get together an update within the next week. Fizzled, anything else for the folks at home?
No, nothing else for me. Actually, still trying to, I guess, grok some of the results that think about some of the analysis. Yeah, we will be actively reading Discord this week and negotiating what we can do to improve Cube with Core 21. I don't expect a ton of cards that aren't in Core 21 or Jumpstart on our radar, but obviously we have at least a few to think about.
Yeah.
Foxnut is saying, what are your thoughts on finding a way to make green white more appealing? If you've been listening to the whole discussion, I've tried not to speculate too much about alternate versions of cards, but like we did mention worded battlements. Man, I wish that was a green card instead of a white card. You'd like the class to help come up with answers for. I think, yes, we definitely want feedback. Anecdotally, on every time that I've drafted green white or cynic, actually, I'm interested in the synergies that I have, and I'm unexcited during. So I don't mind playing the color pairs. I'm never super pumped about the cards that I'm when I'm in those color pairs, and not never. I'm not as super pumped as I am when I see Guardian of the Guild Pestilence, or honestly even just Man of War. And I want to.
I think one of the things that it suffers from is being similar enough to white red, but lacking sort of the punch. Like green white, you can generate a bunch of tokens, but my best green white decks in this cube have just been good stuff piles, not token decks. Interesting. I mean, we've been trying to improve green generally. We didn't realize quite how far behind green white was falling in terms of folks' opinions. But recent updates, the hexproof update namely, is stuff that we're trying to do to bolster green as a color and allow it to sort of present more of a threat that other colors have difficulty dealing with. Obviously, we've also discussed in the past, and other folks have brought it up, that like There's a high quota of removal in this cube right now. So that's something else that we might look at. Yeah, there's a lot of ways that we could tweak things. I think one of our main focuses for the time being, though, is make green a color that is more attractive to play, and then work out some of the minutia. Wonder if a minor +1/+1 encounter spread in green white would be good to look at. That's actually interesting. Yeah, there are options. Again, the gold cards are not super appealing, which shouldn't be the be all end all, but you know, black blue, sorry, has been, constantly smattered with all sorts of brand new toys that it gets to play with. And obviously we've had to cut some of them. That's how many good ones there are. So I think certainly street appeal in terms of the sort of marquee archetype defining signposts is not there. Yeah. We have a lot to think about with regards to that. I will level with you all right here. Yeah. Fizzle, anything else on that, or?
I think that's all fair. Because those of you who have stuck around for the 2 hours are presumably very invested. If you have opportunity, I don't know if in the Discord I put them in. I made 10 sealed decks with my cube. If you find that and take a look, see what changes you might want to make to some of the archetypes. I want to play against some people on camera at some point and get a feel for what's not working in Selesnya in specific. Iteratively make some changes that way.
I think trying to nail down what the ideal Selesnya deck would look like is something that could help, especially because I have a very clear-cut idea of what the optimal blue-black deck looks like, and even the viable options for something like blue-red, but that is definitely one that is a little bit trickier to nail down what a even good version of that deck looks like. All right, cool. If that's the case, we've been going for almost 2 hours here. Honestly, it was shorter than I thought. I expected us to be talking much more intensely about the Thriving Lands, but we managed to kind of get that sorted out beforehand. We have a good idea of where we're moving with that. Don't hold us to this, but hopefully by next weekend we should have an article out with updates.
That's fair. That's what I will absolutely try. Thriving Lands are taken care of on Discord. Yeah, fair.
All right. Thanks everyone for coming out. There will be a VOD of this available on YouTube that we will be linking in various places. But yeah, thank you all for coming out. Thanks for sharing opinions. We appreciate it as always. We'll see you later.
Have a great day, everyone.